The difference between selling to companies versus selling to consumers. Hey, what's up? This is Pete here, and today's video I'm particularly excited to deliver. And the reason for it is because over the years I've been selling in both spaces. So I've been selling B2B or selling to companies, and also B2C, so selling to individuals or consumers. Chances are right now you run a business and you're selling to one or the other market. Maybe you're selling to both, or you've never sold anything in your life and you're here just randomly, which is cool as well, by the way, because if you ever do start a business, or I should say when you start a business, it's a really good idea to understand the intricate differences between selling to companies versus selling to consumers. So without any further delay, let's get into it. But first of all, you know what's coming. Showreel. So where do we begin with this big topic of selling to companies versus the differences of selling to individuals, and more importantly, how you can successfully sell in either or both markets? The first thing to know is that there is a difference between the two. The companies buy with a certain way and different levels. They buy in even more different ways, but we're going to keep it simple for today. With consumers, they have a very different buyer behavior, and certain sales behavior that works extremely well selling to consumers can be damaging when trying to sell to companies, but also vice versa. If you try and sell to individuals how you've sold to companies perhaps, then you might be wondering, why on earth could I close these 500,000 or £1 million deals to companies, and now I'm struggling to sell a £50 solution to an individual? Well, it's because they both buy in different ways. The good news is that you can learn. If you don't know already, you can learn and you can become practiced and even the master of selling to each market and knowing how they buy and understanding the intricacies and the subtle differences throughout the sales cycle. I'll share some things, but you've got to bear in mind some of them will be generalizations that we would need to take a deeper dive into. But I'm keen to share this video because in my business, I'm not saying we've had wild success, but we have been able to succeed in both markets and succeed enough to a point where we can see very clearly what makes companies buy versus what makes individuals buy. Here's what you do need to know. Whichever market you decide to work with or sell your product or solution to, it is always difficult at the beginning. The beginning is always the hardest thing, right? If you're your first day in the gym and you haven't exercised for 5 years, day one is going to be your most difficult workout. If you have only sold in the consumer market, maybe you've destroyed it in the consumer market, you've flown, you've made millions, and then you say, right now I want to sell to companies. Sure enough, maybe, just maybe, you'll go and sell to companies and succeed straight away. But for the majority of people, and by the way, I'm talking about also the people who've never sold anything. Maybe you've never sold a product or service and you just want to get started. Whichever one you decide, and if you sell to companies, it's going to be difficult at the beginning. You will make mistakes, whether you're selling to this market or that market. In my business, I have made more mistakes than I can possibly comprehend. It's only when somebody said to me, Pete, you will make more mistakes in life than you will get it right. But it only takes 1, 2, 3 times of actually getting it right, which can suddenly wipe out all of those mistakes. And those mistakes are now lessons that have allowed us to become the person to get it right. So remember, whichever market you decide to sell to, it's always difficult at the beginning. But getting to the more meat on the bones material, if you want to sell to the corporate market, bear in mind you're going to be dealing with decision makers. So you need to write this down, put it in the comments. Yeah, decision makers. If you go and sell your product as best as you possibly can to the receptionist, the chances are that, sure, they'll nod and they may agree, or they may say, look, who you need to speak to is in a meeting. But unless you get to speak to that person who's in a meeting, who is the important decision maker, it doesn't matter that you've got the best product or solution for that company. The sale will still not go through. However, with the consumer market, everybody you speak to is a decision maker, and they make their decisions very emotionally. Most people, they buy with emotion, and they justify with logic. If you're able to connect with them on an emotional level and build a community around your product or service, people want to feel a part of something. I heard this recently, that the reason why people spend so much money on things that they do not need, things like $1,000 on a bag, or £30,000 on a brand new car, or they buy the latest watch, or whatever it is. The truth is, they do it thinking they're standing out, but actually we do it to fit in. We do it to fit in because that's what we want to do as human beings. So with the consumer market, it is about not just making the sale, you're really building a community. Beyond a community, you're actually building fans. I heard this recently, that you don't want customers, you want fans, and I love that saying. Yes, it may sound like a little bit, I have fans, but that's really what you're buying. In the consumer market with my business, what I've experienced is that most people make their decision emotionally because they know me, they've worked with me before, or they've followed me online, they've built that brand loyalty and that trust. We recently launched a product where I received over 20 messages from people saying, Pete, I don't know what I bought, but because it's you, I know it's going to be great. And I know you're in this to help me. See, that's the difference when you're selling to the consumer market or the individual market. They are making decisions more so based upon the relationship and the connection that they have with you. So if you leave them in the dark, if you're just pitching a new product to them, the chances are you're not going to succeed when selling to the individual market. With the corporate market though, or selling to companies, it's important to know that they are making their decision more so from a place of logic. So that means that yes, you may need to put in a business proposal. Yes, you will have to go to meetings and you will have to solve the problem that they have and be able to help them to find a solution that is right for them. Now, it doesn't mean that the human element goes completely. We still want that human element there too. And now, more than ever, you having a strong personal brand is not only influential in the consumer market, it's now becoming influential in the corporate market. Knowing that there is a difference between these two is invaluable in moving your business forward. But for this video, here's the final bit of advice I want to share with you. We have a belief that the consumer market have a short sales cycle, so they buy very quickly. And over on this side, the corporate market have a long sales cycle. So you might be communicating with them over a long period of time, 6 months, maybe even 2 years before they buy. But what if I was to say to you, I think that's actually a load of rubbish. What is more important is knowing that this person here will not be ready to buy straight away, especially if you're selling a product at a higher end. Both of these markets, if you're selling smaller solutions, you're just selling a commodity, may make their decision very quickly. However, if you're selling a higher end to either of them, then it is about building that trust, that loyalty, and knowing that there's a lot of work before you even meet with them. They may have followed you online, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, here on YouTube, before ever making a decision to trust you enough to make a purchase. So there's some basic differences between selling to both markets. The good news is though, you can sell very successfully in either or both markets when you have the commitment and when you're able to get through that initial challenging time, and then from there to understand the buyer behavior of the people who you will be serving. Thank you very much. I'll see you in the next video.